questions, which brings me back to Dr. Andreas. I think the most important question for today's evening session. In your view, what do you think is the future plan for 2000 Watt Smart City Association in India? And why do you think this is the right time when investors need to come and invest in these kind of particular projects?
First, I have to say that there are very few 2000 watt smart cities on our globe. One of them is called Switzerland. Switzerland, all of it, is one smart city. So all of what you see is a little bit bigger than Pune, but not much. So all of Switzerland, anything between Geneva on one west and St. Gallen on the east end, all of that is one smart city. Towns and townships are small and easy to control. They're well connected and easy to reach. They offer work, they offer schools, they offer hospitals. A lot of good life, just as I mentioned before, has to be done. And they are decentralized, which makes them more resilient. They are also, in a way, deglobalized. Switzerland is not even a member of the European Union, but that makes it less vulnerable. Corona lockdown teaches that we must think in small units to create, for Prime Minister Modi's vision of 100 smart cities, combined with a healthy, safe, and sustainable lifestyle. So I am absolutely certain connected to be controllable and to make a life that will also be enjoyable for our children and their children. That can be done with the 2000 watt smart city. Over.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I think we'll take an additional view as well from the urban expert, Professor Wong. Why do you think this is the right time for investment? And I think there have been questions coming in that why should private entrepreneurs even invest in smart city projects?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So many and a lot of true things have been said this evening. So India is a fast developing country, and we've heard it that there's a tremendous need for residential buildings, etc., etc. And we also need to take care about the environment, about energy consumption, about a healthy environment. This is all true. And this is all true when we talk about smart cities. And we had this discussion for a few years now. And for me, the exciting question is what makes a smart city really smart at the end of the day? Is it the connectivity? Is it digitization? Is it the infrastructure? Is it all the sustainable aspects that we have? And one thing we have not tackled today, and there I see a great chance for India and for the young people in India as well, is about business models. So with all these smart city development goes along the development of new business models. The way we did business over the past years will change tremendously when we implement these smart cities with all the digital solutions as well and all our interconnectivity. We heard about risk mitigation, and this is also a first step into business models. However, smart solutions and the developments in the IT sector will lead to new business models, new ways of contracting, new ways of creating revenues. And there I see a great opportunity. And although we act in small townships that are heavily interconnected and where we have a deglobalization and smaller handleable units in place, we also need to think about scalable business models. Yeah.
A private perspective.
Yes. So I think the biggest thing the government ease of doing business in the country. We are trying to reduce the number of processes. We are trying to reduce the number of days it takes for approvals. We are trying to make things more efficient and more quicker. For example, if a approval was given 45, now it takes just 30 days to give approval. And such big projects when it comes to our country, when it comes to Pune, all the more important that we hold their hands. All the more work together with them in partnership, and make sure that any hurdles which are being faced by the investor or developer is taken care of and is cleared immediately. We have made it single window system in which all approvals of the requirements, requisites, etc. will be taken care of by only PMRD. PMRD is one body which is responsible solely for the project.
So before I move to Miss Alicia again, I had a quick question for Andreas based on the questions. There's an interesting aspect which has been asked. How can the cluster development idea and smart city project together work in tandem? If you could throw some light on that.
Example. In this last slide I showed you, you saw Switzerland and the connectivity. In this next slide, you see a system which I told the Chief Minister was a system of high vulnerability. And I think Alicia will agree with me. If we build a highway between Nagpur and Mumbai and say along the highway, we will build a whole row of smart cities, then that is a great idea. That's wonderful. But to do all of that on one highway is like a pearl on one string. If the string breaks, the pearls get lost. So what we need to do, we need to make the system more resilient. And the grid is the most resilient system we know. It's like the World Wide Web. It works because if one connectivity breaks, another one will take over. And that is exactly the idea of the 2000 watt smart grid. So what you see here is basically all of Maharashtra connected with good connectivity. And connectivity doesn't only mean highways. It also means connectivity of energy, connectivity of goods, and connectivity of information. All of that together will create a smart town or a smart city or a smart state of Maharashtra. Over to you, Payal.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I know we are already way past the time. It's past 7:30, but I'm going to request and take a 5-minute extension since we
for the next few years. So this is a huge ambition. Now, if you go to the next slide, infrastructure investment has two big challenges. One is the actual funding gap, which is enormous. The second one is building resilient infrastructure, right? Because, and we need to do both at the same time. So if you go to the next slide, some of the risks around investing in infrastructure are around political and regulatory. So and some of these are growing. And all of these risks are, as usual, interconnected. So as cities grow, that happen all the time in big installations, and there are financial risks. And so if you go to the next slide, I think reinsurers play a critical role in two ways. One is as risk takers. So we de-risk investments, we lower access and cost of capital. And we also provide the critical advisory to improve regulatory mechanisms that enable big, long-standing infrastructure investments. And we do this, for example, for construction projects from cradle to cradle. We're really looking at the full lifetime of a project and trying to de-risk it all the way along. The second role that we play in the next slide is as long-term investors. And here there's many things that we can do in order to help plug the infrastructure financing gap. So we need to all work together in order to build a healthy pipeline of well-prepared and bankable projects. We need to establish a tradable infrastructure asset class. We need to bring better performance and risk management to the construction industry. And we need to build robust cross-border investment standards so as to provide the right mechanisms and foundations for all of these stakeholders to come together and contribute to this very large and growing infrastructure gap. Thank you.